Well, in contrast to that scene in Ferguson, thankfully here in Las Vegas, we just saw a peaceful demonstration and people really just taking a moment to reflect what was going on there.
Yes, and this was something we were concerned about, but fortunately we had no violence here. Organizers who planned a gathering last night said that they hope to send a positive message, one that allows both police officers and community members to feel like they can speak out openly to each other and talk about this issue. While many locals said that they disagree with the grand jury and that they were hurt by this decision, there has been no reports of any violence in our community as a result of the grand jury's decision, which is not something that can be said for all the other cities across the nation. We saw what happened last night in Ferguson. I stayed up late to watch that coverage, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And there was also a big disturbance in LA. There was a lot.
Yeah, there was. But as we said, fortunately here, you know, calmer minds, they did prevail. And we are joined on set right now by Kevin Hooks. He is the CEO of the Las Vegas Urban League to talk about this really nationwide discussion. I mean, really the world is watching us right now and seeing all of this unfold. And, you know, we were talking about the contrast between Ferguson, Missouri, really ground zero, and kind of the reaction here in Las Vegas. And you said that, you know, your organization and a lot of other organizations really did a lot of work to make sure that we were able to maintain that calm in the midst of a lot of hurt, in the midst of a lot of frustration. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there was a collective gathering of people with the sole explicit purpose of making sure that we did all we could to prevent any violence, but allowing for the proper protesting that we knew would ensue. I mean, history is any indicator. We expected what happened last night to actually happen.
What has been the reaction from people that you have talked to? I know a lot of people very unhappy with this decision. At the same time, a lot of those same people saying they're not surprised by it.
Right. I mean, you know, like I said, history is an indicator, and we've experienced this multiple times throughout our community. We feel like there's a different justice system for African Americans in particular, but people of color and poor people also. And as a result of that, we have lower expectations of what will happen in scenarios like this. Look, the bottom line is, people often joke about being able to indict a ham sandwich, and yet this decision was made the way it was last night. So there's a lot of disappointment across America.
You know, let's talk about the dialogue that needs to take place moving forward. And, you know, many say a lot of it has to do with just opening up those lines of communication with police and, you know, making it so that the community doesn't feel as if, you know, they are threatened by that police presence. So what more do you think needs to be done to kind of facilitate a more positive relationship?
Well, the truth of the matter is that until we are willing to have an open and honest discussion about race in this country, we're going to continue to have this problem. The biggest problem, as I see it, is a lack of empathy. People who don't live that reality cannot empathize with people who have that as an experience.
And some have said that, you know, the interaction maybe that some police may have with people in those communities may not all the time be positive and vice versa. So it's kind of predicated on fear. You know, you don't have these positive interactions with each other.
It's a complicated issue to be sure, but the truth of the matter is that when you live in a world where you represent about 12% of the population, but you represent almost 2/3 of the prison population, you've seen a prison industrial complex built over the last 30 years that includes mostly people of color, black and brown. That begins to be a problem. And couple that with the broken window policing policies that really target communities of color, then people have a distrust of the police that are supposed to protect and serve.
There's a big distrust, obviously, in Ferguson. But you talk to people on the streets here in Las Vegas, and they'll say there's a big distrust with some of our local law enforcement here. So that's obviously a concern and an issue. How do you go about dealing with that in this community?
Yeah, especially in this community. You're talking about 5,000 people coming out of the prison system back to Las Vegas every single year. And most of those people are people of color. There's inherent distrust in that reality because the crime studies are clear. Crime happens equally across communities.
But at the same time, I do want to say that these law enforcement officials put their lives on the line every single day. Every single day they go out to work, they're taking a chance with their life. And so there has to be a way.
There's a balance.
There has to be a balance.
And here's the thing that's really, I think, an important point. I have a 9-year-old son. And the way I have to speak to him and train him to interact with law enforcement is very different than the way my friends who aren't from my community have to train them.
That, and it's interesting.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut across you, but it was interesting because we were reading, there's a school out of New York City, which is actually, they have a class they've incorporated into their curriculum now to teach children how to interact or deal with police. So that conversation now happening, obviously, even outside of households.
And we have to wrap, but the fact that you're saying that you feel you have to talk differently to your son as somebody, let's say if I was talking to my kids about how to interact with police, that's a conversation that needs to be had and needs to be discussed more, and that perception is unfortunate.
It really is.
Well,
We could talk about that all day.
Yes,
we could. Very thought-provoking conversation, and we hope that is one that will continue within our community and abroad.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate it.